The grocery store was alive with the dull hum of chatter, carts squeaking against the polished floor, and the occasional cry of a child tugging at a tired parent. Among the tired faces and hurried footsteps stood Grace, a young mother in a faded sweater, balancing a stroller with one hand and a can of baby formula with the other. Her baby stirred restlessly, letting out soft cries that seemed to echo her mother's unease. Grace's eyes darted nervously at the glowing screen of the register as the cashier rang up her items. Her heart sank when the total appeared. It was more than she had. She fumbled through her wallet, pulling out a few wrinkled bills and coins, her hands trembling slightly. She counted once, then again, hoping somehow the money would stretch farther this time. But it didn't. The cashier glanced at her with a practiced patience, but Grace could feel the impatience of the line forming behind her. Her face flushed with shame. I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice nearly lost in the hum of the store. She slid the can of formula back toward the cashier, forcing a tight smile to cover the sting of tears in her eyes. "I'll have to return this." The baby whimpered, as if sensing the heaviness in the moment, and Grace rocked him gently in her arms, whispering a soft, "Shush," as though her own heart wasn't breaking. Behind her, a man in a crisp navy suit had been watching quietly. Ethan, a CFO used to analyzing figures and negotiating deals worth millions, felt something stir in him that numbers could never touch. He noticed the way her shoulders hunched, the way her eyes avoided everyone else's, the way she held her baby with fierce protectiveness even in her embarrassment. For reasons he couldn't yet name, he couldn't just look away. Grace gave a final apologetic nod to the cashier and began to gather her small bag of groceries, the absence of the formula like a weight pressing down on her chest. She turned slightly, ready to leave, unaware that this moment, this small, humiliating decision, was about to change her life forever. Before Grace could step away from the counter, a deep, steady voice broke through the awkward silence. "Excuse me, don't return that." The words were calm but carried a quiet authority that made the cashier pause mid-motion. Grace froze, her grip tightening on her baby, and slowly turned her head. The man in the suit had stepped forward, his expression unreadable but his eyes soft with something that felt dangerously close to concern. "Keep it on the bill. I'll cover it," he said, sliding his sleek black card across the counter before Grace could protest. His tone wasn't showy or arrogant, just matter of fact, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. Grace's face burned. "No, please, you don't have to do that," she stammered, her voice trembling. Embarrassment clashed with desperation inside her chest. Part of her wanted to accept, but another part bristled at the thought of being a burden, of appearing needy in front of strangers. Ethan shook his head, meeting her eyes for the briefest moment. "It's not about what I have to do. No child should go without what they need." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that left Grace speechless. The cashier, sensing no room for debate, rang up the formula and slid it into a bag. Ethan typed his PIN and pushed the receipt aside, his movements smooth, practiced, someone clearly used to handling things without hesitation. Grace stood frozen, her baby shifting against her chest as if impatient for her to accept. When the formula was finally placed in her hands, Grace's throat tightened. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. I don't even know how to thank you," she whispered. Ethan offered a faint smile, one that seemed softer than the sharp edges of his tailored suit. "You already did," he replied, his gaze flicking to the baby nestled in her arms. Then, without waiting for recognition or praise, he simply stepped back, allowing her to move forward. As Grace clutched the bag to her chest, the weight lifted, not just of the formula, but of a kindness she hadn't expected. She walked toward the exit, heart still racing, while Ethan lingered a step behind. He hadn't planned to intervene. He never did things like this. And yet, something about her, about the way she tried to carry the world on her tired shoulders, made him act without thinking. Outside the automatic glass doors, Grace adjusted her baby against her hip, fumbling to juggle the grocery bags. Ethan watched for a moment, debating whether to approach again, an unfamiliar tug pulling at him. His life had always been about logic, efficiency, and numbers on a screen, but none of those things explained why this stranger had just left him standing still, his chest heavier than it had been in years. The evening air outside the store was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain on pavement. Grace crouched on the curb, trying to manage everything at once, her baby squirming in her arms, grocery bags threatening to tip over, and the precious can of formula she held as if it were made of gold. She tried to pack the items quickly into a frayed reusable bag, but exhaustion clung to her every movement. A strand of hair slipped from her messy bun, and she blew it away with a sigh, muttering softly to calm her fussing child. Ethan lingered a few steps away, watching her in silence. He told himself to walk to his car, to leave it at just this, one kind act for a stranger. But something in the sight of her struggling alone wouldn't let him. He stepped forward slowly, his polished shoes clicking against the concrete, and crouched beside her. "Let me help with those," he said, his voice gentle. Grace looked up quickly, startled. Her instinct was to refuse. She was used to doing things on her own, used to fighting through the exhaustion and carrying more than she could handle. "Oh, no, I've got it," she said quickly, shifting her baby to her other arm. But the wobbling bag gave her away, nearly spilling before Ethan steadied it with one hand. "You don't," he said softly, meeting her eyes. "At least not tonight." Something in his tone disarmed her. Without further protest, she let him take the heavier bags while she adjusted her hold on her child. Together they walked toward the far end of the lot, where her old, dented sedan sat beneath a flickering street lamp. Its faded paint and squeaky hinges told a story of years of wear, and Ethan felt a pang as he set the groceries gently in the trunk. On the short walk, Grace found herself speaking, surprising even herself. "I'm Grace," she murmured, almost shyly. "Thank you, for back there. Things are tight right now. It's been tight for a while." Her voice carried both shame and strength, as if admitting it out loud was a risk she rarely took. Ethan nodded, listening without interruption. He was used to conversations full of statistics and negotiations, but her words carried more weight than any boardroom pitch. "I'm Ethan," he offered quietly. "And you don't owe me an explanation. You're doing your best. That's more than most people realize." Grace blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice. She pulled her baby closer, and for the first time that day, she allowed herself a small, tired smile. Ethan noticed it instantly. It was faint, but it lit something inside him that he couldn't explain. As he closed the trunk, there was a silence between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with an unspoken connection. Grace's baby reached a tiny hand toward Ethan, fingers curling as if trying to grasp him. Ethan hesitated, then let the small hand wrap around his finger. The unexpected warmth jolted him, a feeling both fragile and grounding. For the first time in years, Ethan wasn't thinking about deadlines, numbers, or the next big deal. He was thinking about a woman with tired eyes who smiled despite everything, and a child whose simple grip made his chest ache in ways he hadn't felt before. The days turned into weeks, but the image of Grace sitting on that curb, clutching her baby as if shielding him from the whole world, refused to leave Ethan's mind. He found himself stopping by the grocery store more often than usual, though he told himself it was coincidence. Each time, he caught himself scanning the aisles, searching for her without admitting it. And then one evening, fate answered. Grace was there again, her hair tied back, dark circles beneath her eyes, balancing her son on one hip while trying to carry too many bags in her other arm. Ethan didn't hesitate this time. "Grace," he called softly, approaching with a smile that felt warmer than his usual reserved expression. She looked up, surprised but not guarded this time, her lips curving in the faintest smile of recognition. They walked out together, and when he offered her a ride home, she hesitated before nodding. Her car had been giving her trouble for weeks, and though pride made her want to refuse, exhaustion made her accept. The ride was quiet at first, but as Ethan glanced at her in the passenger seat, her baby fast asleep against her chest, he realized he was seeing something he rarely witnessed in his world: raw, unpolished resilience. When they pulled up to her apartment complex, Ethan's chest tightened. The building was old, with peeling paint and stair railings rusting from years of neglect. Grace carried her son inside with practiced ease, but Ethan lingered by the door, taking in the cramped, dimly lit space she called home. It wasn't pity he felt, it was admiration that she managed to make even this space feel warm, with a few scattered toys and a baby blanket neatly folded on the couch. Over the next few weeks, Ethan's gestures grew quietly, never flashy, always careful not to strip away her pride. Sometimes a bag of groceries appeared on her doorstep. Other times, he connected her with someone who helped her land a better-paying job with more stable hours. Grace noticed, of course, and though she tried to question him, his only answer was a simple, "You deserve better." What surprised them both was how easily he fit into her little world. Her son giggled every time Ethan leaned close, reaching out tiny hands as if he already knew the man belonged. Grace found herself laughing more too, the sound foreign to her at first, then natural when Ethan was around. She had been so used to carrying everything alone that letting someone in felt both terrifying and healing. One evening, after dinner at her small kitchen table, Grace caught Ethan watching her as she rocked her son to sleep. His eyes weren't the sharp, calculating eyes of a man who lived for numbers, they were soft, almost vulnerable, as if he was seeing something he didn't know he had been missing all his life. "You've given me something I didn't even know I needed," he admitted quietly once the baby was asleep. "I spend my life chasing goals, but none of it ever felt like this." His voice broke slightly, uncharacteristically raw. Grace blinked back tears, because for the first time, she realized she wasn't just a charity case to him, she was someone he chose, someone who had unknowingly touched the walls around his heart. And in that fragile silence, in that tiny apartment with its flickering light, two worlds that never should have collided, finally did. A lonely CFO who thought he had everything, and a single mother who thought she had nothing, discovered that together they had found what both had been searching for all along. A reason to hope, a reason to belong, and a love that could change everything.